Hello, welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane. Q&A for you today. Thanks for all your comments and questions and musings as always. Thanks for all your comments on the last video I posted, what makes this bike great, on the KTM 990 SMT. Fantastic bike, and a lot of really good comments there. Mostly people love them, mostly people have had good experiences with them. Some haven't, but it's really interesting. I've been on my travels. I've been to Ireland, not on a bike unfortunately, just for a long weekend with my girlfriend, to Dublin, Belfast and Portrush. And I've never been to Northern Ireland before, and I was absolutely blown away. I think I'm a little bit late to the party because, you know, cross country from Belfast to the coast was amazing, and then the coast road all the way around to Portrush and past the Giant's Causeway is just amazing. I'm definitely going to go back on a bike. And I was so kind of oblivious to what was going on there. We were there the weekend just before the Northwest 200. If I'd have realised it was going on when I booked, I would have definitely have stayed. But it was nice to bump into some of you when I was there who came and said hello. So thanks very much for that. I've also been on the launch of the Ducati X Diavel V4. That was in the south of France near Grasse. And although we got some dry running, it rained again. So the rain is definitely following me around launch season in Europe. But you can read all about that bike in MCN and online. I picked up my MCN long-termer this week, the Ducati Street Fighter V4, V4S. No, it's not a V4, it's a V2. Ducati Street Fighter V2S, the one with the new engine. And again, I had a maiden voyage on it at the weekend, and you can read all about that in MCN soon. I'm going to keep that till August and then change into a Multistrada V2S. So it'll be interesting living with that new engine for the year. And closer to home, we've just done a group test of some middleweight adventure bikes, all new for 25. The Yamaha Tenere 700, the Honda XL 750 Transalp, and the Vosges DS 900X. And that'll be the first time I've ridden that bike. And that's the bike that's actually got the same engine as the BMW GS F 800, 850 or 900 GS, I believe, made by Longqing in China. So that was a really interesting test, and you can read all about that in MCN soon. And finally, I just want to say that my thoughts go out to the friends and family of Owen Jenner and Shane Richardson, who sadly lost their lives at the first round of the BSB Championship at Alton Park. Those boys will be greatly missed. So let's get on with some questions, shall we? So the first one is from Tuck7570. Thanks very much. Hi Nevesy, why do you think 30,000 miles is a lot of miles? You hear people say they have hundreds of thousands of miles on their bikes, and I've had 50k on one and now 44,000 on my old SV1000 since new, and it's still pulling well. Back in the 70s and 80s, I'd agree that 50,000 would be close to the end of a bike life, but now I don't think it's anywhere near. I'd like people who have influence like yourself to stop saying that sort of comment. As people take bikes to dealerships, the first thing they say, it's got nearly 10,000 miles, and they'll find the bike hard to sell with that mileage. Please stop. The bikes are built a lot better than the old days. P.S. Sorry about the moan. No problem at all. Interesting, actually. So your comment comes off the back of the KTM 990 SMT video I made, where I remarked that the bike I was on had 30,000 miles on the clock, and I thought that was quite a lot. So we've all got kind of a perception of what a high mileage bike is, haven't we, really? You know, in the car world, you'd probably say that 100,000 miles is a lot, and in the bike world, as low as 10,000 miles. And that's quite an arbitrary figure really, because that wouldn't really apply to bikes or cars with kilometers on the clock. You know, 1,000k and 10,000k is a lot different. And would they have that same kind of mindset where they use kilometers? I'm not sure. But it's kind of almost like a knee-jerk reaction to it. And I would agree that, you know, bikes nowadays do a lot of miles, but you know, with motorcycles, the engines are small, they often get stressed, so, you know, and they rev high, so you get a lot of wear and tear on the engines. You know, the bikes are used and abused. Bikes are more delicate than cars, so things kind of, you know, wear out more quickly. And from a personal point of view, you know, obviously MCN as a road tester, we test 99% brand new bikes. We don't go anywhere near used bikes, but we do some used bike tests. And it's actually quite hard to get hold of used bikes because you've got one of two choices. You can either go to a dealer and ask to borrow a bike, which quite often they're happy to do, but the used bikes that they've got in their showrooms have just come in from customers. They haven't been serviced yet because there's no need to service a bike before it goes out. So we quite often get bikes as they've come from the owners, and bikes with a lot of miles in my experience quite often being used and abused quite heavily. I mean, they still work and they're still reliable, but you know, the consumables are all to pot and bearings are worn and all that kind of stuff. Or you can ask a reader or a friend to borrow a bike, but we're always reluctant to do that because people don't really like having miles put on their pride and joy. You don't want to risk crashing their bikes, so it's something we steer clear of. So it's kind of my main experience with used bikes comes from dealerships, and they can be a little bit rough around the edges. But you're right, 30,000 isn't a lot of miles if you look after a bike. And I think that, yeah, you hear of motorcycles with massive miles and they're still going strong. But I still think that from a personal point of view, if I take my journalist hat off, if I was looking for a bike to buy and I was in that position last year with my GSX-R 750, I would say that bikes sort of over the 20,000 mile mark, I would start to maybe not be quite as eager to look at them as the lower mileage bikes, you know, just simply because they're going to be slightly more worn out. But not the engines. I mean, the engines on motorcycles are really robust, and probably the bikes fall apart around the engines. The engines are the strongest thing. So yeah, so apologies for saying that 30,000 miles is a lot. You know, I personally think it is really, even though the bike's still reliable and in good condition, it kind of would put me off a little bit. But here's the question I'm going to put out to everybody watching. What do you think constitutes a high mileage bike? Would you happily buy a bike with 50,000 miles on the clock, or would you want to go after a low mileage bike? Be interesting to hear what you think. So please comment below. Great question. Thank you very much. Next is from Potato 42069. Hi Neezy, I'm moving up from an R3 to a 600, primarily for track days, but we'll take it on the street here and there. I'm looking at older models around the 2010 era. How would you compare the CBR 600RR and the GSX-R 600? Thank you. Well, good little choice of bikes on your short list. I'd say Suzuki, basically. I mean, you know, we were still doing big 600 group tests in 2010. They were kind of coming to the end at that point. The CBR 600 had been around since 2003. And although it evolved along the way and it was a great bike, it started to show its age a little bit back then. But it's still fantastic in isolation. It's really well built. It's a really nice road bike. It's physically very small. It's a great track bike. But in 2010, Suzuki brought out the new and improved GSX-R 600. And it was really a step above the CBR. Not so much in quality, because I think probably the Honda just gets it in terms of build quality, but the Suzuki's engine was fantastic. It got a lot of updates for racing, although it never really raced, did it? But it got a lot of updates anyway. It got a ton more mid-range grunts, so much so that if you covered the 600 stickers up, you could be convinced it was a 750. It was that urgent on the throttle and that free revving, and the rest of the bike is just superb. Really light, agile chassis, good grip, not too much of an extreme riding position. It's got adjustable pegs as well, really good brakes, sounds fantastic, and quite affordable if you can kind of find one by today's standards. So of those two bikes, I would definitely go for the GSX-R 600. And it's probably, you know, the 675 always used to win group tests, but I'd say of all the 4-cylinder bikes, that's the one that's kind of most suited to the road, just because the engine's so flexible and it's really good fun on track as well. You know, the R6, much more single-minded and revvy. Same goes with the ZX6R. CBR, probably a little bit dated. And the Daytona 675 is a bit of a different kettle of fish. A little bit more race orientated, and a 3-cylinder, which some people love and some people don't. But the GSX-R 600 is wonderful. Thanks very much. The next one is from Phantom Mark. I have a question, please, Neezy. I'm getting concerned that on track I'm balling up the edges of my tyres heavily, but still don't have the confidence or correct technique to get my knee down. I know it's down to body position, but I just can't find what I need to have a go. I'm only on a S1000XR on Bridgestone factory fit tyres, but getting concerned that as my track experience builds but my lack of technique doesn't improve, I'll end up running out of tyre when I should be using less tyre for more speed? Question mark. Any tips to break this cycle of bad technique? Only been riding 35 years. Only time I got my knees down so far is when I fell off. We all know about that one. We've all been there anyway. Yeah, good question. I mean, first thing I'd say is that within reason, looking at the state of your tyres when you come in from a track doesn't really tell the whole story about your technique or anything like that. It just really shows your lean angle. And you know, whether your tyres are balled up or not is hard to say without using the same tyre, trying different techniques at different speeds, you know. So I wouldn't look at the tyre as kind of proof that you're doing it wrong kind of thing. I'd also say that the OE tyres on the S1000XR, the Bridgestones, although good, you can fit much better tyres on track, so you'd probably be stressing the tyres out quite a lot anyway. Original equipment tyres never have the performance of the replacement versions. And the other thing I'd say as well is that riding a tall rounder like that, BMW S1000XR, is always going to be tricky. You know, they're kind of sold on the fact they're super bikes with comfortable riding positions, and they are. They go from A to B really quickly. You can take them on track, but they're not kind of natural born track bikes. They're quite tall. There's quite a lot of suspension travel. So you kind of got to ride them in a different way to a sports bike. You've kind of got to nanny them around the track anyway. And if you're maybe carrying too much corner speed, you're not really playing to the strengths of that bike. You know, I would ride a big bike like that. That's kind of it's got quite a lot of movement in the suspension, more of a sort of a point and squirt technique. So you're not carrying big corner speed. So you're not letting the bike kind of get out of shape. So I'd use kind of a little bit more kind of V-shaped lines, and I would carry less corner speed, which is kind of what you got to do on track anyway. Yeah, a lot of what you're finding is probably two things. It is body position, and it is probably too high a corner speed. And yeah, you could do an hour-long video on those things. So kind of in general terms, body position, you know, the whole reason that you hang off is to keep the bike more upright mid-corner. and you're leaning over the front, so you're giving the front more grip in the middle of the corner and more feel, because you can feel what the front tyre's doing if you're right over the front of it. And it's always a good idea to get into your body position before you brake, because if you brake and then get in your body position, there's so much force on your body, it's hard to move, and you'll upset the bike and you'll give yourself too much to think about. So a good tip is to get in your body position before you brake down the straights. And in real terms, on any given racetrack, that means you're never sat in the middle of the bike. You're always sat one side of it or the other, anticipating the next corner. And then it's a question of carrying less corner speed. So it's a question of braking where you brake now, so don't scare yourself, but just don't touch the throttle until you get to the apex. So that means you're kind of slowing down and down and down until you reach the apex with a low corner speed. Then you pick the bike up with your body and the throttle and you accelerate out. Rather than what a lot of road riders do is they brake and then they let go of the brakes and get straight on the throttle and carry throttle through the corners, which generates a lot of force on the tyres, which could be why they're balling up, which means you can't get on the throttle very hard down the straights because you're accelerating with lean. And all those things work on the road but not on the track. So yeah, it is a question of technique, but you know, you're taking a bike like that on track anyway. There's no real need to take your brain out and leave in the toolbox and chase after lap times anyway. You know, it's more about having a good time on a bike like that. So you know, if you think that you're gonna go so fast you might get into trouble, just slow down and enjoy the ride. And you know, perhaps get some instruction. You know, all the track day companies have got really good instructors. I do one-to-one instruction, so you know, paying for instruction is better than probably any add-on that you could ever put on your bike. You know, it'll give you a lot more safety and a lot more speed. But great question, thank you very much. Next is from CFEF1RP. I've got a question for you, young man. What ear protection do you wear whilst riding on public roads, on track, doing testing? I've just re-watched your ring video from 6 years ago with the 911 chase car. Superb riding on top shelf video. Thanks very much. Yeah, that video was a little lap I did with my brother. He was driving a 991 GT3 RS and I was on a Ducati 2018 Panigale V4, and we just had a little muck around the Nürburgring. There was so much wind noise, unfortunately, that I just had to put some music over it, and it was the breakdown of Dazed and Confused from How the West Was Won, Led Zeppelin. So I really enjoyed it. A lot of people didn't like the music, but anyway. As for ear protection, I've said many times before, I'm deaf in one ear from having mumps when I was a kid, and it broke a nerve in my ear. So I haven't been able to hear in my left ear since I was 6. My right ear's got tinnitus from motorbikes and drums and loud music, and the hearing's gone down because of old age as well. So I've probably got 70% hearing in my good ear and none in my bad ear. So it's quite often a problem when I'm out and about. People think I'm ignoring them. I'm not. Sometimes I am. No, I'm not. But I always wear earplugs. Always, always, always. So the earplugs I wear at the moment are these Honeywell Max Light earplugs. They last me twice as long as anyone else because I only need one in my good ear. And I can't ride without them. If I leave home and forget my earplugs, I've just got to go back, no matter how late that would make me. And I always replace them after every ride, after every day. You know, they've kind of got a bit of a rough texture, and even after a couple of wears, the rough texture goes smooth. And even though you don't notice it over time, they become less effective. When you do notice it, when you put a new earplug in after a really old one, suddenly it just blocks off all the sound. A lot of people can't get on with them at first because it kind of blocks off a lot of sound and it feels like one of your senses have been taken away. But in fact, it kind of hones the senses that you've got. You can still feel the revs through your body. You can still hear the engine. You can still hear traffic noise. You could hear a siren behind you if you needed to. But it just gets rid of that horrible wind noise and induction noise. I once raced an R1 at Almeria without earplugs, and the induction noise was just absolutely brain drilling. I couldn't believe it. And I need these now on adventure bikes, because adventure bikes have got such noisy screens. Even these don't really get rid of the head battering that you get from adventure bikes. So yeah, always wear those earplugs. They're quite small, easy to put in. You just screw them up, lick them, whack them in, and off you go. So yeah, I'd recommend earplugs to anybody. And I see people riding without them. I don't know how they do it. But thanks for your question. Right, this is from Hinterland Rider 5300. Good day, Neevesy. Love your content. My question: I'm currently bike shopping and considering a Triumph Bonneville T100 or T120 because I love the retro style. I intend the bike to be a daily rider. However, there's one detail about these bikes I can't seem to overlook: tubed tyres. I'm a tradesman and work in an industrial park. What if I get a flat from a screw or nail in my tyre? I'd be stranded either at work or on the side of the road somewhere. Unlike with tubeless tyres, I can't just carry a tyre plug kit with me to fix it on my way. I know the Speed Twin 900 and 1200 has tubeless cast wheels, but they just don't look as nice as the T100 or T120. I can't imagine having to pull the whole wheel off a bike after a 10-hour day at work and somehow replace the tube in a car park. Am I overthinking this? Cheers. Yes, in a word. Yeah, I get your dilemma. You know, it's quite easy to fix a tubeless tyre at the roadside, you know, with those worm things, nice and easy. But to be honest, I wouldn't, if your heart is set on a Bonneville T100 or T120, I'd say go for it. I mean, you know, it's easy to tempt fate by saying punctures aren't that common, but they're not really. I mean, in my MCN road test career, I could count the punctures I've had on a motorbike. I seem to pick them up all the time on a push bike, with one hand. You know, we test a lot of bikes with tubed tyres, you know, like you say, some of those retros, a lot of adventure bikes with spoked wheels, and I've never had a problem. I'm not saying it can't happen, but to be honest, I wouldn't let the hassle of repairing a tube tyre very, very occasionally put you off buying the bike of your dreams. Yeah, you know, I see you're a tradesman and work in an industrial park. Obviously, you're going to get more debris in that kind of environment, but maybe there's something you can do to kind of mitigate against that, because out on the open road, it's not going to be a massive problem, I don't really think. And yeah, get the bike you want, and kind of worry about punctures later and just cross your fingers. But I don't know if anyone else has got any advice for Hinterland Rider. What do you think he should do? Thanks very much for your question. Next, from King Kiri 1556. Would the Rosso 4 Corsa be too much tyre for an NSR 250R? I'll admit, the last time I bought new tyres for it was a set of GPR 70 SPs in 2020 before I blew it up. It's finally running again after 20 years. I've been out of the loop for a long time and doing a lot of research to choose a new set for mainly slow intermediate track days with occasional dry weather road use. There's just so much more variety these days. Any advice would be followed and appreciated. Well, thanks very much for your question. First of all, I'd say I'm very jealous that you own a Honda NSR 250R. They are amazing bikes. I've never ridden one. I'd absolutely love to. And I've got a little bit of a penchant for looking at two-stroke 250s at the moment. I really, really want to buy an RGV 250 Suzuki, an M or an N model with a banana swing arm. I raced an RGV 250 back in the day, and that was a K model, and I raced an M No, I had an N on the road. Getting confused. But anyway, the prices at the moment, second-hand prices, are ridiculous. They're a lot more than they were a few years ago, and they don't seem to be selling at that price. So I'm going to sit tight and wait for a good one to come up, and I definitely want to get one. But anyway, back to your question. The honest answer is I'm out of the loop when it comes to tyres for those bikes. I'm not even sure of what the recommended sizes are. But what I would say is, if you can find a modern generation sports tyre that fits, that's the one you should go to. So avoid sports touring tyres, because the tyres themselves are quite heavy, and obviously you've got a very light bike, so you'd be increasing unsprung weight. The profiles are generally quite flat with sports touring tyres. When I say sports touring tyres, I'm talking things like Metzeler Roadtech, Pirelli Angel GTs, Bridgestone T, like 31, 32, 33s, whatever. Dunlop Road Smarts, Michelin Road tyres, you know, Pilot Road 6 or whatever. Avoid those, and also avoid, you know, really sticky track day tyres, because there'll be too much tyre for your bike. Even a Rosso 4 Corsa, I would say, would be too much tyre for your bike. You know, it's always nice to have loads of grip, but if you're not using a massive percentage of that grip, what's the point? You want a tyre that's got a lot of grip, but it's still going to be easy to use. You get good wear out of it. So I'd say that any kind of middle rung sports tyre is good. So you've got Pirelli Rosso 4, you've got Metzeler M9 Sport Tech or an M7 Sport Tech, you've got a Bridgestone S23 or even S22 or 21 are really good. You've got Michelin, do you know what, Michelin tyre ranges completely defeat me, but whatever Michelin's sports tyre is called, their range is so confusing, even I keep forgetting. So tyres like those basically, and I think that they will be absolutely perfect for your bike. But let me know what you choose and how you get on, and yeah, God, you're so lucky. Thanks very much for your question. This one is from Mr. Hugh Jampton. Mr. Huge Hampton. I'm puzzled, Nevesy. I watch World Superbike now and again, and I wonder why Ducati still have the old single-sided swing arm. I've read the road test for the 25 Panigale, and they say that the new double-sided swing arm is the way forward. It obviously isn't. What's going on? Well, thanks for your question. That's a really interesting one. So, you know, part of the whole drive behind the new Panigale V4 is that it's a lot easier to ride. Ducati are making all of their bikes easier to ride now, after going through a period of them being quite stiff and quite gnarly and just all about straight line speed. Now they're getting more and more kind of soft and cuddly, relatively speaking, which makes them easier to ride on the road. That make them easier for track day riders, and as is proved in World Championship and national racing, their super bikes are easy to ride by everyone too. So the new Panigale has got a flexier frame, and it's got a double-sided swinging arm, which is a lot flexier as well. And it does what Ducati says it's set out to do. So yeah, you can see that that bike isn't racing at World Championship level. And the reason really is simple. Generally, Ducati's R versions, which is the bikes that they use to homologate for the race bikes, are a year behind the road bikes. So you can kind of trace that back to the 999 perhaps, but definitely the 1098s, they came out in racing a year after they were launched. You know, the works bikes were still 999s when the 1098s were on the road. The Panigale, the first Panigales were raced when the 1198s were still racing on track, and now you've still got the old V4R while the new V4S is on the road. Now, there's no news about whether Ducati will actually make an R version of this 25 V4S, but you've got to say that they will. And even the same goes in World Supersport. They're not racing the new V2S, they're still racing the old one, but you'd have to say that that bike will come out next year as well. So I don't think the fact they're racing the old V4R has anything to do with the fact that the new technology isn't any good. I just think that historically they're a year behind. Well observed and good question, Mr. Hugh Jampton. Next is two more. From Alex T, 3274. Thanks for your question. Hello again, Michael. It'd be interesting to share some tips on how you write articles. For example, is it a specific template of things you want to comment on, engine, chassis, brakes, etc.? Or is it specific on how you feel every motorcycle? Also the same about tyre or other product reviews. Really enjoying the company of your videos. Thank you very much. Yeah, the right inside of the road test job is more or less all of it. You know, all you'll see in an article is a nice sunny picture of us riding motorbikes somewhere nice, and you know, that's what you kind of dream of. If you dream of being a road tester, it's all about the riding, but in actual fact it's mostly writing. You know, whether it's for, you know, I work for MCN, but I also do articles for Bike Magazine and Ride Magazine, for the MCN website, social media and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of writing, and you know, writing for magazines is journalism, and it's a very specific kind of art, and it's a lot different to kind of more of a bloggy style that you'll see online. It's very specific. It's why we often find it quite hard to find writers. You know, a lot of people have got the ability to ride a bike and assess a bike, but the writing side of things is quite difficult. And also MCN is unique in that it has to be turned around double fast. You know, MCN is a hungry machine that gets produced every week. The articles have to be written really quickly. They go through the production process and they're printed. It's even quicker for online. So, you know, I'm not a natural born writer. As a lot of you may know, I won my job in a competition, and when I rocked up at MCN I had no writing experience at all. I luckily went straight into a journalism course, an intensive 6-week journalism course, and then learnt on the job. And at the time I was surrounded by an office with 25 to 30 editorial staff, a lot of writers, from news writers to feature writers to road testers to sports writers, a lot of sub-editors, and the sub-editors are the people that knock all your words into shape. They make them fit on the page, they write the headlines, they write the subheads, they write the captions, they make sure it's in the MCN style, they check for spelling mistakes, believe it or not. They make sure you're not being libelous. So you've got a lot of safety nets when you write, which is one of the good things about, you know, working for a big publication like that, which you don't necessarily get online. And that allowed me to learn on the job, learn from really good people, and along the way have my words thrown back at me, you know, with red pen all over it. And when you write, it's such a personal thing. You can take it really personally when somebody criticizes it. But over the years you learn, well, I've learned to almost distance myself from my own words that I write. And when I go back to check them, I can be quite brutal with myself. If I think something's rubbish, I'll just remove it. So it's kind of a skill or an art or whatever that's developed over years for me. A lot of people are much more naturally gifted than I am and can just bang out an article just absolutely beautifully without any kind of work afterwards. But we're all different, aren't we? In terms of how we write, we definitely work in a framework. Each type of test is a specific layout. We have different types of road tests that work for first rides and for group tests and for product reviews and for tyre wall reviews. So they all have to fit in a kind of a template really. But the actual words you write, the block of copy, you know that it has to be to a certain length, and you know, it's got to be to the point, it's got to be entertaining, it's got to be full of information. So, you know, it's a permanent balance and spinning of plates of how you achieve that. And for me, it evolves all the time. You know, I'm always trying to find ways of doing it better, because just like riding a bike, it's a journey of self-improvement. You always want to do better. And, you know, you always want to give your superiors the best copy you can, and you want the readers to have the most interesting read as well. So it's always evolving. The way I tackle it is different. You know, in the future, I don't think it will really apply to road tests so much, because you're originating something from scratch. And part of the hard thing about road testing is disseminating all that information you got. So, for example, at a launch, you're bombarded with technical information. The bike bombards you with feelings, and you've got to kind of turn all that into some words. It's often easier just to write like a 1,000 words, say, on something that's straight out of your head that you don't have to refer to. It's really difficult to try and squeeze in lots of new information into 1,000 words. But AI is around the corner, and you know, things like ChatGTP that would help writers turn, for example, if they had a 500 word piece they wanted to turn into a 300 word piece, they could maybe use AI. But I mean, I've looked at it, and it's nowhere near good enough yet to, you know, create a really sort of engaging, compelling test or review or article or news story or anything like that from scratch. Because basically all AI does is scours the internet, and if that information isn't on the internet already, because it doesn't exist yet, it's not really a lot of good to you. But I enjoy the writing side of it as much as I do the writing, to be honest. I think if I was just testing bikes with no writing attached to it, it would feel a little bit hollow. I quite enjoy the writing. Yeah, it gives you a sense of pride as well when you see it. Well, I hope that's answered some of your questions. With regard to product reviews, tyre reviews, it's kind of the same really. You're sort of disseminating all the technical information about the products or the tyres, and then you've got experience in testing them, and you need to sort of somehow rearrange your thoughts into presenting a decent review of them. But yeah, thanks very much. And finally, you'd all be pleased to hear is, I don't know if that's finally actually. I think there's two more. This is from Jade1312. Sorry to get your hopes up. Thanks for your question. There really is something to be said for an older V-twin. I went for a modern parallel twin, CP2, to a Gutsy big block, and the parallel twin just feels inauthentic in comparison. Yeah, I'd agree. Also a question, what are your favourite bikes that are relatively simple, only ABS, maybe traction control, that you can still buy new today? Well, I've written a few down. Thanks for your question. Obviously, most bikes have got electronics now. They have to have ABS. A lot of bikes have got traction control, but then a lot of bikes have got a lot more. But I would say, in terms of brand new bikes, there aren't many really that are kind of simple and pure. The Yamaha MT-07 I really like, but that kind of goes against your modern parallel twin thing. But the thing I like about the MT-07 is it's got just the right amount of power for what it needs. It's really fun, it's really playful, it's punchy, it sounds good. It hasn't got traction control. Well, it has now. The original ones didn't. Maybe you could get like a year-old one. So they're just absolute wheelie monsters. The other one I really like is a Fantic Caballero Scrambler 500. Again, very simple, very light, no electronics. It's got ABS, but that's about it. And then I'd agree with you with the Moto Guzzi. The Sport, V7 Sports are really nice, really characterful. They've got a smattering of electronics now, but not really too many to spoil your day. But yeah, those days of kind of simple bikes are gone really. But you know, there are a lot of really good bikes that hide their electronics. Most do really. Most you'd never really know they're there, and you can still have fun on them. But they are there, and you probably have to pay more for them at the end of the day. But if they don't intrude, there's not really a big problem having them, and they might save your skin one day. But yeah, great question. Finally, this time, let's double check. Yeah, this is from In Marty We Trust. Thanks for your question. Hey Neezy, I'm contemplating a CBR 954RR. That's a Honda Fireblade to you. 02 or 03 model as a keeper bike, much along the same vein as your GSX-R 750. I figured it has close to the same power and weight as a GSX-R 750 with more relaxed ergos than the 600s. What's your take on a 954RR? Great question. Really, really nice bike. I really like it. It's quite interesting actually, because bikes like that, we're in the shadows of the kind of the glitzy bikes of the day. So, you know, if you think of super bikes back in the day, in that era, the GSX-R 1000 was king. And, you know, in road tests and group tests, all the others were kind of also rans. You know, more recently, S1000RRs have been king. You know, when you think of all these kind of landmark super bikes or super sport bikes or even adventure bikes or anything like that, any bikes that always win, always put their rivals in the shadows, and they're never really spoken about as much, but they're really, really good. And the same goes with the CBR. I think the CBR, if the GSX-R 1000 hadn't been around, the CBR definitely would have been the best of the bunch back then. Really beautifully made, you know, proper Honda build quality, fast engine, really great handling. You know, I love the looks of it as well. So, you know, if you're contemplating one as a keeper, definitely go for it. But what I would say is it's not much like a GSX-R 750, even though the power is similar. You know, the very fact you've got a bigger engine with more inertia, the fact you've got bigger wheels and tyres make the bike feel a lot heavier, a lot less agile than a GSX-R 750. The 750 feels just like a 600. It's very light, it's very agile, very kind of playful, feels like a small bike really. Whereas the CBR does feel like a big bruising super bike by comparison. Even though the power's about the same, the Honda's going to have a lot more grunt in a straight line than the Suzuki, but the Suzuki would probably, you know, have it in the corners. But I guess that's not what you're saying in a direct comparison. You just like that bike in the same way as I do the 750. And I think that's right, so you should. I think it's a great bike. And be interesting to see what colour you're going to go for. I like the blue and black ones. But there you go. That's that for this video. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you again soon.